Well, this summer I got a chance to operate at the Front Range Rail 2023 in Denver, Colorado. And the Front Range Rail is an invitational event for operating on several different layouts that participate in it. And at this particular event, I got to operate on 4 different layouts, but I also visited 2 other layouts, one of those being the Greeley Model Railroad Museum, and then another local modeler's HON3 layout. But this first layout we're going to be looking at is John Parker's BNSF Fall River subdivision in HO scale. Now this is a modern layout, meaning that he's running pretty much the latest equipment. And it's a little unusual from what I do in my home layout, but I like all different types of model railroad or railroads, from old to new to big to small. So once again, when I'm at these events and I'm operating on someone else's layout, I'm an operator first and I take videos second. I don't want to ruin it for anybody else or for the layout owner, so I try to pay attention and only videotape when I feel it's safe to do so without harming the session. What makes it particularly hard to videotape on our layout like the Fall River sub is that it runs off of signals, so I have to pay attention ahead of me as well as trying to look at a train and videotape. And I learned pretty quick that it's harder to do than I thought it was going to be. And you'll see one instance where I actually see a signal get thrown the moment I got to it. And had I not been recording, I would have saw the signal throw. But the signal threw literally at the moment before I got to it, so I would have had to slow the train down anyways. And I avoided the accident and everything was fine. So this is the train I ran the entire session. It was called the Public Service Coal, or as they refer to it as PSC Coal. And this train basically runs from a mine all the way almost over the entire railroad to a power plant. And once it reaches the power plant, it basically drops off its string of loaded cars and picks up a string of empties and does the trip again. Now this train actually had a crew change. It had died and I had picked it up while it was loaded. So here you can see I've pulled into the power plant and I have changed over to a string of empties and I'm just waiting here for my green signal. Down there on the right is actually a distributed power locomotive, which we were not running. They thought it'd be more fun if we ran man helpers on this. What this operator is doing here is it's actually delivering orders. Behind that wall there, or the backdrop there on the right, is the mole staging, and that's where operators pick up and drop off train orders. So here you can see I got the green, I'm leaving the power plant. And this layout is particularly fun to operate because he's got a lot of different things like grade crossing, and he's got the new Iowa scaled engineering squealers installed, and he's got train detector, talking train defect detectors on the line. So you can see my signal on my line is yellow here, which means I have to proceed at a slow pace here, and I'm going to be looking at my next signal to see if it's red or green or what it is. And I actually made it through that yard there, and I'm pulling up here now as I'm leaving to head back to the mine. It's an Amtrak station there on the right. Actually meeting another loaded coal train. This layout's really fun because it just swallows a ton of different operators. I mean, I don't even know how many people were there, over 20 people. The layout's big enough too where you can blow the horn and the crossing sequence, and it feels like it really is necessary because you can do it at a scale distance away. Here I am crossing that same bridge that we saw my video start at. Now this layout is a mushroom layout, so there's areas where, on one side of the backdrop there's another aisle. And you can go on his website and look at his track plan. It's pretty well designed to fit this space. So if you saw my signal there, if you're not familiar with the way these signals work, is even though it was green when I got there, the minute I get into that block, it'll turn red. And that's what got me the time that later on you'll see where I run a signal is I glanced at it, it was green, and then when I glanced back, it was red, but I didn't know if I tripped it red or if it tripped red before I got there because my train had already passed by it. Everything from the street lights to the structure lighting, the layout just is, eye candy every way you look at it. So right now I'm entering a Helix here, and it's I believe a 4 or 5 turn Helix. And on the side of the layout there's a light indicator that will tell you if kind of track your progress through the Helix because you can't see it. Here I'm overtaking another train that's waiting on a passing siding. And I'm actually at the top of the grade. I'm going to start to head down grade here, go through a series of snow sheds. And it's really fun because the grades here are really long, so when you have a helper on, they're on your train for a long time. What's really fun about the radio chatter here is that the layout's so big you actually can't hear either one of the voices. On some layouts you hear both voices talking and you can kind of ruins the illusion, but here it really sounds like the real deal. So here you can hear that squealer kicking as I enter the snow sheds. So you can see here now the signal on the lower left there is red, so I'll be pulling up to the signal here and stopping. And they won't give me a radio call when it turns green. It's my responsibility to watch it. And you can see it was yellow there before it turned green. It had been yellow for a little while. And then by the time I got ramped up and everything going here, it had already turned to green. So here, if you watch that signal, you see that how it dropped to red there? I wasn't watching it. I was looking at the train in the viewfinder. I didn't see that drop to red. And you'll see I noticed it right about now when I looked at the turnout and I thought, wait, why is it routed straight? There's a train right ahead of me. And then the radio came on and said that I had missed a signal. So here I am pulling into the coal mine, and I'm going to be looping around and going under the flood loader. One of the things you notice right away on this layout is there are locomotives everywhere. Just like the prototype, you just see all these trains just sitting around. So what I'm doing here is I'm pulling up to this tower here, and in that tower there's a camera that's aimed down over your train. And what this camera does is it looks for anybody that might be riding in the empty coal hoppers, because there was a case where the railroad was sued because they poured coal on someone that was sleeping in a coal hopper. And so you have to look at every single car, and he randomly puts little people in those cars, and you have to see them in there and stop the train if you see one, back it up, and you press a button on the fascia and it calls the railroad police and they come get him out. So here I am pulling under the flood loader. Now this is not an actual working loader. As the train gets farther out here, I was dropping loads in. So here I am, my train's loaded, and what you didn't see is I did have the green signal, and I'd already gone through the signal there. Now I'm at the top of the helix, of another helix. I think there's 3 or 4 helixes here. Now you can see on the fascia here, that vertical panel, that's the light indicators for your progress to the helix. And then here you can see I've come to a stop where I'm waiting for this empty train to pass by. And in the foreground there is my manned helper set. And once a line clears ahead of me, I'll pull ahead enough for those helpers to tie on the rear. Now, this particular train on the left that's past me is really interesting. It's a welded rail train, and those are long pieces of rail. They run the entire length of the train. The rails are actually made out of plastic. They're not metal, and they're flexible enough that they can flex around the corners. And they do move. They're fastened in the middle, so they move off the ends. So my helper is tied on, and now I'm going to upgrade through the snow sheds. I'd actually gone through a long long section of the railroad here before I got to this point, but it was not possible to record that. It's a really nice scenic section here. It really feels like you're in the mountains. This is up high here too. This is in my face. I'm not bending down to get these views. I'd say this is probably an accurate representation of the elevation of the layout here.
Looking good so far. Makes me feel special. Oh yeah, we feel so special.
So you can hear the defect detector told me that my train had no defects. Now I'm overtaking an empty train that's actually going back. This is the helper power. I believe it's the distributed power on this train. Well, that's going to be it for the video I have of the Fall River sub. I wish I had more. The session was about 4 hours long, but most of the time I was just trying to pay attention to what I was doing and just enjoy the session as well. Again, a big thanks to John Parker for having us all over for Front Range Rail.